The quarterback carousel hits yet another stop this Saturday against the Cincinnati Bengals, but Nick Mullens gets his shot to lead the Minnesota Vikings out onto the field in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
A game now, which was 4 games left for the Vikings, and when you look at the playoff picture and how tightly packed things are, every single one of these games is going to be important, especially since the division is technically still out there for the taking. Um, and realistically, if you're going to look at a quarterback that if you're kind of going to keep the same offense going as we kind of had all year with Kirk Cousins, the quarterback that's going to fit the most into this offense is going to be Nick Mullens. And when he was able to come into the game on Sunday, we didn't see a ton of him, obviously, just part of that fourth quarter, but that was the most, like, at least normal the offense has looked in a while, for good and
Yeah.
bad at the same time, I think. But it was the most in rhythm that offense had looked in probably a couple weeks. So, yeah, I mean, in an important game on the road, it's Nick Mullens' time to shine.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And I do think, like, in my opinion, I'm still on team Jared Hall. I still want to see what we have in him. One good news, I guess, is that he'll be quarterback too going in this game. If Nick Mullens, I'm assuming this is still going to be somewhat of a short leash. I don't think this is going to be as short as what we were thinking with Dobbs, just because he
Right.
is the guy that's most like Kirk Cousins and fits in this offense, like you said. At least that's what I think. So I mean, if he makes some mistakes, he's a guy that probably isn't going to make as many mistakes as Dobbs, anyways. But as far as like keeping this offense going, but that's one thing with him and Dobbs in that last game. One thing that you knew when he came in right away. I mean, he threw that strike to it got tipped, but went into T.J. Hawkinson's hands. It made the defense immediately have to worry about, okay, we can't just play up like we've been with Dobbs and bring on the same amount of pressure like we've been doing with Dobbs. And as soon as he came in, that's one thing that was immediately different is the pressure wasn't coming at Nick Mullens in the same way it was with Dobbs. So I do think it's a reason why having Mullens in there, you did kind of see this offense get going a little bit. And we've been talking about it with Dobbs throughout this entire Dobbs experience is like he needs to be able to get the ball down deep. Otherwise, they're just going to keep bringing the pass rush. So that's why I do think with Nick Mullens is you can't, especially if you have all these wide receivers, you need to make sure you can pass. You should be able to pass on all three levels with this kind of talent. And even though I do like the mobility, and that's why I kind of want to see Jaron Hall, and I want to see what we have in him outside of that. I mean, I do think you have to in this offense. You need to be able to throw first, and then mobility second. And I do think you're going to get the pass first thing out of Mullens for sure. And I mean, one thing we know about this team in general is just their defense. And Brian Flores has just, this defense started off surprising us on how much better it got to last year, but it's just getting better and better every single week. And you mix that with a solid offensive line performance for most this year. Honestly, the worst games it has been with Dobbs, but they've been having no choice but to bring the pressure. So I do think that, I mean, you have to take a little bit off of our offensive line on that because they're dealing with that in these games with Dobbs. But we do not have Brian O'Neill this week. He is out. So that's something we have to look at. I don't know if it's Quesenberry is going to be taking his spot. I know he takes Darisa's spot when he's out. So that'll be interesting to see on that. But in with our team, I think we just have enough talent and from wide receiver position, pass catching positions in general, our defense, and you get a guy like Nick Mullens, who is probably going to be more of a game manager, who does have a good arm, and I mean that's going to be enough for you to continue to win games, I think.
For sure, yeah. And Nick Mullens, I mean, as we said, he's had experience. He played with San Francisco, got some starts there. I mean, everybody viewed him as a quality backup quarterback, right? And that's kind of the position he's been in his whole career. And he's had some opportunities out there. I mean, overall career stats: 51, 68 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. So yes, he obviously is prone to some of the turnovers as well, which you get a lot with those backup type quarterbacks. But I mean, I just think like you said, we saw it, like he, took more shots down the field last week. And with him in there, I think Justin Jefferson plays most of that football game because Dobbs kind of threw the hospital ball up there, which led to the big hit and the injury. We get it, big hits happen, but that was a pretty big shot that you left the best receiver in the game out there for. And yes, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson still is the best receiver. You're not number
He's
one.
going to prove
Don't
it.
get it twisted, man. But yeah, man. And I think the thing that is probably going to help as well here is we just need to continue to try to get that running game going. And obviously, you never want to, like, nobody ever wishes injury on anybody, right? But everybody who wanted to see more of the different type of running style, the Ty Chandler type of running style, the Kene Nwangwu type of running style. This is the week we're going to get that. Alexander Mattison also out with that high ankle sprain. Hopefully he does get back here because I do think he brings something to this offense. If we can get a little bit more of a 50-50 split between the two types of running back, I think that's when he's most effective. And he actually has had his best games these last couple of games, especially last game. I thought he was running pretty hard, hit the hole well, and he was gaining some nice positive yardage. But I think we're finally going to get to see a little bit of what Ty Chandler has. I mean, at this point, you really got to feel like he is going to get the bulk of the running back snaps. And again, a good running game opens up the passing game. And that's exactly what we need here. And like you said, it's just, you need enough to where all Nick Mullens has to do is distribute. And with the way this defense has been keeping us in games, he's going to have the opportunity to do that, especially against a Bengals team. And yes, you are looking at a Bengals team that has Jake Browning is playing above everybody's expectations right now. And that's another team that has a ton of weapons. But I mean, if this defense can do what it has done and limit what the opposing offenses can do, I think we could finally start to see a good rhythm from this Minnesota Vikings offense.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm excited to see what we have in Ty Chandler. We've been calling for him more often than not. Hey, sorry, everybody. I'm coming off of a sickness here, so my voice is a little off here. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see more of him. I'm excited to see the speed coming from the backfield. And what you said, Justin Jefferson in the past game, and the Bengals have not been very good in that area as far as coverage anyways. So being able to have JJ coming back with a guy like Mullens that can get it to him is going to be big for us moving forward into this game. And I mean, even after this game. So I'm excited for that. And it is going to be good to see if Ty Chandler really does come in here and be what a lot of us thought he could maybe be, which honestly is really just being more productive than Alexander Mattison.
For sure. And I mean, talking about their defense, like you said, their defense is susceptible because, I mean, overall 31st ranked in total defense, allowing 379 yards per game, 27th ranked pass defense, 252 yards per game, and 24th ranked rush defense, 127 yards per game. And they're allowing 22.1 points per game. So this defense, you can get after them. But in order to do that, we're going to need to see a little bit more out of of this offense. And I know one of the biggest gripes about that Raiders game last week was we had 2 weeks, and even before they took Dobbs out, right? Like, it just didn't look like this was, because I know Kevin O'Connell kind of said they were going to design more plays for him specifically for his skill sets. And I think they had a couple rollouts, but a little bit later on in that second quarter there. But overall, it just looked like a team that didn't have a bye week plus to kind of revamp the offense a little bit. And I mean, is part of that Kevin O'Connell just wanting to get to Nick Mullens? It very well could be, but I don't know. I just hope that maybe now that it does go back to a little bit of, you have just a pocket quarterback, right? Yeah. Maybe now Kevin O'Connell can kind of, I guess, not have to overthink things and can just kind of run the offense he wants to run. Again, whether that's for good or for bad, depending on on how you feel about how this offense should go. I mean, again, it's one of those things where with everything that's gone on this season with the injuries and stuff, it was going to be tough to revamp an offense to fit a different skill set of a quarterback, especially one who coming in, learning all the terminology. So I do think going to Nick Mullens, a guy who's been in this system for 2 years, I do think this is going to be the most, I don't want to say efficient, but probably efficient type offense we've seen. Like, again, I don't think we're going to have any high passing yardage. I really think it's going to be a pretty tight game. I think our defense is going to keep us in it, and our offense is going to do just enough to help us win it as Nick Mullens does kind of get comfortable, getting back into the rhythm of playing again. But I do think this is going to be the most kind of coherent we've seen this offense in quite a while with the way that Nick Mullens plays quarterback. I just think we're going to see that. I think we're probably going to see a little bit more Jordan Addison involvement now that JJ is going to be back fully. Because I do think also last week JJ going down did kind of throw off anything that they were planning on doing. Because when JJ gets back in there, you're formulating your game plan around his skill sets. And when he goes out, then you got to completely revamp again for an offense that you already tried to revamp a little. So, yeah, man, I'm cautiously optimistic about this weekend. And just again, it's weird to say that with Nick Mullens because I'm not going to be tricked into believing that he's the answer. Everybody knows that he's a backup quarterback, right? But I think we could finally see a little bit of rhythm in this offense now.
Yeah, we just have the talent there. The talent's on the offense. I mean, you already mentioned you got DJ Hawkinson, JJ, Jordan Addison, KJ. He just needs to hold on to the ball. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, Brandon Powell has stepped up of recent weeks, and Oliver. So you do have all the talent you want on this offense for any quarterback to succeed, whether you're or backup quarterback or starting quarterback or not. And even Dobbs, I mean, Dobbs, he had JJ for like 5 plays or whatever. So he never really had a JJ in his offense. At the same time, with Dobbs, you also want a quarterback that can throw the ball, like we talked about earlier, and that's going to be the difference with Mullens with this offense. And so I mean, in this game, like, do I think, yeah, maybe this first game you don't see any like crazy offensive explosion, but I still think you're going to see a pretty decent offense, even if it's ran by Mullens. And it's mostly going to be because we do have so much talent on there. So I'm not too worried about that. I still think we put up some decent points this week. As far as defense goes, I think we do well. We are against Browning, who I think is going to come down to earth, even though he's been, carried my fantasy team into playoffs. I already said that I had to use him anyways, but he did. But I do think that stops this week against our defense that held the Raiders. So, I mean, again, Aiden O'Connell, but they still have Devonta Adams and Myers and Josh Jacobs to 0 points. And I do think we're going to do really well again this week. And then, really just stopping Jamar Chase. But I do think it's going to be coming down to how both of our offenses play, Cincy and the Bengals. And, I still take our offensive talent over there. I'd say it's close though. They got one of the closest ones to us.
Yeah.
But Mullens and Jake Browning, you probably even go Mullens in that, right?
That's
up until the last couple of weeks, people probably would say Browning, but if before that, people probably would have said Mullens.
Right. I mean, and I think you are right. Eventually, I do think we are going to see. I do think we are going to see Browning kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Yeah. But I don't know, man. Really interesting game. Looking at it from the start of the season to now, it is completely flipped on its head, 100% different. And obviously, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. Their passing offense, though Browning put up the big numbers, I mean, obviously helped by Chase Brown's 54-yard touchdown. If you look at some of those numbers there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like if you look at like Jamar Chase he had a huge game 2 weeks ago. Last week, 3 catches for 29 yards. T. Higgins has been wildly inconsistent this year, especially due to the injuries. And Tyler Boyd has made impacts, but also last week, again, 2 catches, 23 yards. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I think there's going to be moments where we feel close to as frustrated as we did last week. Mm-hmm. But you did notice, though, when Mullens got in there, that something just kind of flipped with the offense, right? Like it seemed like there was a little bit more spark. There was things, and I know I looked at Kurt Warner had said something about how he felt bad for Dobbs, like there was drop passes, a lot of stuff. I'm like, that is true, but eventually you do got to look at just like what creates that spark, right? With him, there was just nothing happening.
It's because the pass rush, man.
It didn't feel like there was any energy out there. The Nick Mullens comes in, he takes, like you said, he takes that one chance. Sure, it got tipped, but still into the arms of TJ Hawkinson, and that just kind of sent the spark that was needed into the offense to at least get us into the position where we can kick field goals. And it was 2 drives in a row. We could have had 2 field goals in a row, but obviously we elected to do the weird field goal punt thing, which ended up working out, killing some clock. But at the end of the day, it's like
that was weird.
Nick Mullens came in. He was able to operate the offense to the point where we could make positive progress and get into scoring position, something we just didn't see enough over the last couple games with Josh Dobbs. So again, I mean, is it the right call? Who really knows? And it's always the argument of, you know what you have in Mullens, you don't know what you have in Jaren Hall. But also, if you're still trying to make the playoffs, you're going to pick the option that you do know what you have. And I do feel like to an extent, they do know what they have in Jaren Hall, but also it shows the fact that he's number 2 quarterback shows that they have that there's the trust there that if Mullens does go down, Jaren Hall is going to be able to lead this offense for us. We highly believe that, but we think right now the person that gives us the best chance to win, because right now this team is focused on winning because they're firmly in the playoff picture. And I agree with Kevin O'Connell. It's like he gives us the best chance.
Well, it's the experience.
Sure. Right, exactly. Could Jaren Hall end up being better? Yes, but we do not know that right now. What we know is what we have in Nick Mullens, what we've seen, the real NFL game tape we've seen, and we trust that that's the right position to go. Again, could it be 100% wrong? Absolutely. But that's just, it's a choice you got to, like, as a head coach, it's a choice you need to make. And I mean, if you've seen anything with Kevin O'Connell, he's been really good about living with his choices. And I mean, he's going to have to. And again, I 100% agree that if you're looking towards the right now and more known commodity, obviously Nick Mullens is the way to go. And that's the direction he chose.
Yeah. And it made sense, obviously. I mean,
Right.
the fact that you started your quarterback, or he was the quarterback too, and Jaron Hall is third string, and then he comes in and then, makes the offense look a little bit better, or actually, I mean, quite a bit, moves it quite a bit better, or whatever. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, your job, all he has to do is which isn't easier said than done, but is get the ball into your playmakers' hands.
Mhm.
And if you can't, that's what kind of team we are. So I mean, you don't all you need to do is be able to throw somewhat decent to make that happen. And I think that was the issue with Dobbs. And that's something that we do feel confident that Mullens can do. Obviously, again, if the pass rush is coming and he's getting pressured, you kind of feel like it's going to be a Kirk Cousins type of situation where he's just going to have to take these sacks instead of, improvising a little bit like that we did get to see in Dobbs to some extent. But hey, it is probably the best chance for us to win. And,
Mhm.
unless he gets hurt or he does bad enough where Jaron Hall comes in and maybe you do get something similar to Mullens, but someone that can move around a little bit. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's Nick
I mean,
Mullens up next.
when it comes to Kirk Cousins, if you could give Kirk Cousins Josh Dobbs mobility, you have the best quarterback in the NFL right there. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, it'd be a
And
good
obviously,
yeah.
we kind of talked about our defense versus their offense a little bit. Brian Flores, defense, Daniil Hunter, DJ Wanham, Ivan Pace,
Ooh,
Bynum, Harrison Smith. Just keep doing what you got. Josh
Yeah.
Ellis, who, by the way,
Oh,
like that signing
yeah.
is looking like an absolute steal at this point.
Dude's
Just
a
keep doing
monster.
what you do. And this
Yeah.
offense, eventually, they're going to get it figured out. And hopefully, this is the week. So, speaking of which, get into that. Does the offense figure this out this week? How many points do we put up? What are your score predictions?
I'm going to say this is going to be, I'm not going to say very surprising because of the talent on both offenses, but I'm going to say it's going to be a higher scoring game. I'm going to go 31-27 Vikes.
Wow, that's quite the
And
prediction.
if it's not, it's because of our defense. It's because of
Okay.
our defense
Okay.
because we haven't been allowing a lot of points, but I do think, I mean, I know both quarterbacks are backup quarterbacks, but man, it is Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. They got T. Higgins is healthy, TJ Hawkinson. I could see it being high scoring, but if it's not high scoring, I do think it's because of our defense is keeping control of the game.
Okay. I'm gonna temper the expectations. I'm thinking this is gonna be like a really ugly. We either put up 21 or 17-14 type game.
Okay.
I do think Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson do a bulk of the scoring, mainly because they are on my fantasy teams in the playoffs. So hopefully, but yeah, I think it's going to be a 21-14, 17-14. I do think the Vikings end up pulling this out though. But we want to hear your guys' thoughts. Drop your score predictions down in the comment section. Do you think Nick Mullens is going to get this offense moving? And we'll see you guys next time right here on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.